Welcome to Awakening Within. I'm your host, Jill McPherson. Today we are looking at the importance of communication skills in creating intimate relationships. I've personally discovered the importance of this myself from my guest today. He is a man who dedicates his life to helping people more effectively communicate so they can not only hear and understand the other, but perhaps more importantly, hear and understand oneself. He's the Director for Human Awareness Institute Ontario, and I am so pleased he is with us today. Allow me to introduce to you Eric Nagler. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Hi.
So, Eric, our paths have crossed because you have been a huge role model for me in how to better effectively communicate, particularly in my own personal intimate relationship with my husband. So it's really important for me to allow viewers to have access to this kind of information. It's very helpful. But before we get into some of those examples, tell us how you got into being what I'm going to call, a relationship expert, a communication expert. How did that all begin for you?
Well, I mean, if you want to go back to the beginning, it began with my being so jealous and having such inappropriate kinds of relationships that I knew that if I didn't do some self-discovery, that I would never really be able to have a good relationship. So I've been looking at myself and finding ways to discover myself for a long time. And when I got to do some workshops with the Human Awareness Institute, it focused a lot on communication skills. It focused a lot on authenticity, being able to just be able to express who I am. I was at in a college class, in a university class, and the teacher said, who was a kind of a mentor of mine, she said that she'd spent 2 weeks with this guy Fritz Perls in California, and he was a psychotherapist, and he said that he was going to spend the rest of his life being completely honest, just telling the truth. That's what I did. I laughed, right? And I thought about the girl sitting next to me, and if I was completely honest about what my feelings were, I'd probably get thrown out of the class, right? And so it just seemed impossible to me. But it stayed with me. And I recognized that it's the way that I was thinking about the girl sitting next to me. If I treated her with dignity, if I had respect for her, if I cared for her as another human being, then it's these same feelings. But I would be able to say the feelings in ways that the other person could understand. And so communication really becomes ways to share your heart in order to be able to be authentic.
Wow. Yeah. So then you're on a mission to be honest yourself?
Well, yeah, I have been, and so whenever I find myself in a situation where I'm not being true to myself, I just notice that. First of all, an important thing is just to get rid of the guilt around it or the sense of responsibility around it. Somebody says to me, do you want to go to dinner with me on Friday night? And I say, no, I can't. I blah, 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 blah. Truth is, it's not can't. The truth is, it's my priorities, and going to dinner with you on Friday night is not my priority. So I just notice. I notice my language around that. I notice how often we use the word can't when it's really hiding something. And how can I actually be able to be truthful to you and be honest and be myself and still be able to treat you with respect and have you feel good about yourself,
Right. So instead of I can't?
First of all, you've just asked me to dinner. You haven't actually asked me. You have just asked me to dinner.
Yeah, well, you're going into this hypothetical.
Right,
Eric, would you like to come to dinner with me?
Thank you. Thanks for asking. And what I'm doing actually is recognizing that you've put yourself out, that you've put yourself in a place where you could be rejected. And so I just want to acknowledge that, So it's starting with a thank you is a really good idea. Thank you, and no, not this time. Yeah.
Wow. And we don't hear that very often, do we? We hear the excuses, the apologies,
right,
but not the truth of the no.
Yeah, and we don't hear recognizing a person's rejection, recognizing that a person has taken a risk. Just to acknowledge the person for that has a lot of effect on the other person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you have since university days, this has been an ongoing thing to learn how to effectively communicate. Is that, would you say?
I wouldn't have put it those words. I've been exploring myself. What is it about, well, first of all, one of the big things was about commitments, getting married and making commitments to be honest with each other and commitments to be true to each other and commitments for this and commitments for that. And sometimes in those commitments, I'd be putting people in impossible places. Like, maybe she's become attracted to someone else. Maybe she's had some kind of experience that I would feel terribly guilty about. So she won't be honest with me or tell me the truth. So that commitment to be honest and true to each other gets discarded, okay? So for me, what happens is, how can I make a space for the person I'm with to be themselves? How can I make a space so that they don't have to be untruthful to me? How can I make a space so that they're comfortable just being themselves? And I look at myself and I go, well, my jealousy's standing in the way. So I think a lot of, when you talk about, my dedication has been to discovering myself, discovering what has been holding me back, and discovering along the way that love for me has become, rather than an amount or rather than a need. And I hear people say love means that I can satisfy everybody, all of the other person's needs. Love means for me that, the other person is everything to me. Well, I was feeling love, but that wasn't it, And I discovered that love actually for me is a space, it's a place, it's a way to allow me to be myself and you to be yourself.
Great.
Yeah.
And we're going to take a break there and come back to more interesting insight on love, communication, intimacy. We'll be back. Welcome back to Awakening Within. Today we are discussing the importance of effective communication skills in creating meaningful relationships. We're also looking at the importance of vulnerability as a pathway to intimacy. My guest, Eric Nagler, is here to shed light on what this all really means. So let's pick up where we left off.
Okay.
So we talked about how people have such a hard time with being honest.
Yeah.
And why is that?
We live in a society where there is so much fear and so many expectations upon us and so many stories that we've been taught and we've been told. We hold ourselves in, and it's really difficult to be authentic. With our work with the Human Awareness Institute, one of the things we want to do is to be able to create safety among people, with people rather than without people. When we're being intimate these days, it's like we're only intimate with our partner, we're only intimate with our family, and everybody else is, you have to be careful. And we're told all the time, be careful walking down the streets, strangers, and learn how to say no and all those things, which are all necessary and important in our society. But when and how can we expand on our community and be intimate within an expanded community? And so we look at that. We look at ways that we can be safe with each other. For example, one of the things that we do at the Human Awareness Institute, is we have a way of hugging.
Okay.
People need touch.
Yes.
And yet we're so deprived of it so much in our society. There are only these people that we can touch. And I just remembering that in the turn of the last century, the germ theory was a big thing, and nurses were told never to touch the babies because you might be giving them germs. And there was a certain mortality rate. And then along came a doctor who said, this is terrible. We need to be touching babies. We need touch. And put the babies on a program of being cuddled and held by the nurses, and the mortality rate dropped.
Right.
Touch is something we need to live.
Yes.
So one of the things that happens, for example, with a hug, have you ever had a hug that you didn't like? either because it was too needy or because it went to the wrong places or there was expectation. So one of the things we do about hugging is that this is a hug that has no expectations. That if I'm with somebody who's been to a Human Awareness Institute workshop, they know exactly what I mean if I ask them for a hug. It's just a way of connecting our hearts together. That's all it is.
Right.
And so it starts with making eye contact, and making sure permission, making sure I have permission, you have permission to share a hug. We never ask sometimes,
Yeah, we often just, hey, and there,
Yeah. And then to share our hearts, which just share this vulnerability. One time somebody said, no, your heart's on your left, and stuck their heart. No, it's just to be able to share this tender place. And if one person's a different height, then the other person has elevators in his legs to come down, so that we can just share a heart space together, maybe take a breath together. And the hug is over when the first person lets go.
Okay.
Did you ever have one of those hugs where they don't let go?
Yeah.
The hug is over when the first person lets go. And if you want more, then find a place or a way to get more, but to respect this person who's ready to let go.
Right.
And then to reestablish eye contact,
Right.
and to say thank you.
Okay.
So it actually has a form, okay? I make eye contact, I ask permission, we share our hearts, it's over when the first person lets go, we make eye contact and say thank you.
Okay.
And I get dozens of hugs, when I'm in my community. Okay, should we try it? Can we try
Sure,
it? Okay,
okay.
so let's stand up.
What if I don't want a hug?
Let's just try that and see what happens, okay? Do you want a hug?
No.
No. Oh dear. What's the matter? The hug is about you, right?
Right.
Whether or not you want the hug is about you.
Right.
It's not about me. That's a really important thing to get. And I've been, taking workshops for 20 years, and I still have difficulty recognizing that when you say no, I don't have to take that on. I don't have to feel,
Right.
Terrible or rejected.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd just try it. I mean, you said, we're often not honest. So what if I
Yeah.
was honest and said,
Right.
I didn't want a hug?
Yeah,
You're saying your job is to not take that personally.
absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Rather than you going into what's wrong with me, why wouldn't she want to hug me?
Right. And I find that's a really difficult thing because we tend just to automatically take it on ourselves. So it's just something to practice constantly. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to hear no. And why did you not want to have a hug? Maybe you've had 15,000 hugs already, and another one you wouldn't be able to take in.
Right.
Maybe you are feeling so sorry for yourself and wallowing in such self-pity
Right.
that were I to give you a hug, it would take you out of that comfortable place of misery.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
because
that's
I'm
what-
happy being miserable right now, and don't wreck my
Yeah,
pity party or
exactly.
whatever. Right.
The point is that it's about you,
Right. Right.
Something else that we experience at High is we really talk about choice. You've made a choice to say no.
Right.
And we recognize and really want to encourage people to be at choice from moment to moment.
So now, from moment to moment, I could choose a yes now.
And I'm going to take a chance.
Okay.
I'm going to take a chance.
Okay.
So, Hi, could I have a hug, Jill?
I'd love a hug.
Oh, let's do that. Thank you. So I just had to bend my knees only a little bit because I'm pretty short too. But that's an important thing, just to share your heart.
Right. To be right, the same
Yeah.
heart space.
Yeah. So a lot of what happens around intimacy in the real world is expectation. We've had a hug, now I can hug you the next time. No. We've had a hug, now we can go out together. What any of those expectations, it's really good to just let go of them.
Right. And just let a hug be a hug.
Yeah. And any kind of intimate experience, just be it, that there not be an agenda to everything in terms of when people are communicating with each other, in terms when people are being authentic with each other, that it not have expectations.
Right. So we're always at choice, moment to moment, and we hope you choose to come back after the break. Welcome back. What a powerful discussion we're having here on relationships. And if you're just joining us now, you're not too late to be enlightened on some essential information on creating a meaningful and intimate relationship. My guest, Eric Nagler, is here, and I asked him before the show if we could do some sort of demonstration, and he suggested active listening. So.
Okay, so active listening is a really powerful way of communicating with your partner or really with anybody.
Okay.
And the fundamental is that there's a person who's speaking and that person has the floor. Okay. And the person who's listening, their job is to make sure that they hear the other person.
Okay.
And the person and giving the other person an opportunity to totally empty out.
Right.
Sometimes I don't know how we're going to demonstrate or what's going to happen, but sometimes in an argument, for example, one person is angry at the other person, and then it escalates because then this person defends themselves and then gets angry in return or is sorry and the focus comes back and forth and back and forth. Now, in my house, very often, if one of us is angry, the other one just listens. And makes sure that they understand and makes sure that the other person has the opportunity to completely empty out. And it's not my job to defend myself or, if I'm the listener, to make excuses or any of those things. It's not my job.
Right. Your job is to listen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Want to try it?
Sure, let's try it.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to have an issue.
Okay.
That I bring to you.
Yeah.
And so I'm clear. So I get the floor.
Yeah.
Okay. I like this.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So an issue happening right now for me is here I am down in the city taping a show, and my son's at home sick.
Right.
And I'm feeling guilty being here because I should be with him.
Yeah.
And what kind of mom leaves their kid sick on the couch to go to work?
Right. So you've got that story about not being the best mom.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, it just feels rotten, that it's, like, who am I to put myself first?
So it's important for you to sacrifice to your son, to their needs. Is that what you're saying?
Well, now that you say that, it doesn't really sound true, but I think that's what I was believing.
Right.
It's interesting to hear you articulate what I was thinking for me to hear myself.
Well, that's what I heard, so I just,
Right.
repeated it back.
Right. Yeah. So how do I deal with the guilt? Or actually, then that's not active listening anymore, is it?
Yeah, well, if I was keeping to active listening, I would say, I hear that you're in the question. I hear you're in the question about how to deal with that guilt.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to just stop right there for a second?
Yeah, okay.
So, first of all, if I don't tell you my idea of how you should deal with your guilt, I'm really trusting you. I'm putting you in a place of trust that you know how to take care of yourself. And by just feeding back what I had heard you say, I was like a mirror for you, and it gave you an opportunity to suddenly see something that you hadn't looked at before.
Right.
So what actually often happens, just as it did here in active listening, is that if all I do is listen, you'll be able to go deeper than if I was giving you advice. Or if I was taking, talk about guilt. I've got a guilt story for you. And all of a sudden.
And then making it all about you.
Yeah. Right.
And then I lost the floor.
Yes.
So to speak. Like, now it's not about me anymore. Right.
And if you think about it, I don't know, if people think about their daily lives, how often do we just give somebody else 2 minutes to just speak? And in active listening, it's often more than 2 minutes because you're not just speaking, but I'm also needing to find out make sure that I understand what you're saying and perhaps find out more. So you have lots of time we don't do that generally. If you think about your relationship, I'll tell you what happens for me. What happens for me is my wife, Diana, she'll say, I had a lot of trouble with my knee today. And I'll say, well, did you put blah, blah on it? Or can I give you a massage? Or
Yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah,
And
well, if you did that long walk, then that's why it's hurting. And
yeah, oh, that's the guilt one. That's a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
one. Yeah. I generally do the fix one. And so now I'm fixing it. And I haven't really had an opportunity to hear what really is going on for her. All I heard was one sentence.
right. And
So
then
if
you
she
went
says
in.
I had a lot of trouble with my knee today, and I say, uh-huh, so it felt bad, right? And then she has an opportunity to continue talking. And then she might get to, there were things that I shouldn't have done, that I feel badly about having done, and in a way coming to her own realizations about how she's dealing with her knee and what's happening for her. As a man, I think it's a sex-linked characteristic that we need to fix things.
Right.
And that's the thing I'm working on in my relationship, is letting go of fixing, because it really gives the other person it trusts the other person to come up with their own solutions.
Right.
Yeah.
And just to really hear another person,
Right.
rather than get caught up in the story of what you have to come up with to fix.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So you are fully present, and for your wife when you're listening, just listening or doing active listening.
Yeah. And we do that at High a lot. Those are some of the kinds of skills that we experience and that we practice.
Right.
One of the neat things about the workshops that we do is that rather than talking about it, we have an opportunity to actually practice everything, because you
Right.
really learn by doing
Right.
as opposed to listening. So in a weekend workshop, there's comparatively little talking that's coming from the floor. It's mostly us. Well, hey, let's try active listening. Let's see what that's like.
Guiding people through this exercise like what we just did.
Yeah.
So if the viewers wanted to get a hold of you about doing a workshop in the Ontario area,
Right.
how would they do that?
Well, the easiest thing would be to just go to eric@ericnagler.com. If you have my name, then you have my email,
Contact, right.
and you have my website. And that would be the easiest, because one of the things that we do, it's mostly around Ontario, but around Toronto, but it's in other places in Ontario and through the Midwest as well, in the East Coast, is we have 2.5-hour mini workshops where people have an opportunity to just get a taste of what the weekend workshop is about. Okay.
Right.
And I'll lead a mini workshop, and we'll do some one-on-one stuff, and we'll do some sharing. We'll do the hug sharing, for example, and we'll do some other ways for us to be intimate with each other, and be safe with each other, even though the people in the mini workshop are maybe strangers with each other. We go away after 2 hours with a strong sense of knowing each other. If
Right.
intimacy means into me you see, then we go away from that workshop being seen and seeing people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Say that again. Into
me you see. Intimacy. Into me you see.
Wow. And that really is the definition of intimacy, isn't
I
it?
think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing this information. Thank you for watching, and we hope that you have taken something from this on what you can do to create greater intimacy in your lives.